There's no doubt the madness is one of the greatest spectacles in sport.
Win! An incredible shot!
But before its one shining moment, before all of its heartbreak, we first have to find out who's competing in it.
Welcome to the selection show.
Now find out where they are going in this.
There are 32 automatic bids given to the 32 conference tournament champions. The remaining 36 spots are at-large bids, with the fate of all tournament hopefuls in the hands of a 12-person committee. Many of them know if they're in or not. But for the bubble teams, for all the first-timers, it's pure euphoria when they hear their school call.
The announcement of this year's tournament pairings. Now the word.
Selection Sunday, it's a tradition. For the schools that earned their bid, it's the first step of making history. It's the first moment when they realize they're going dancing.
Good stuff right there. We are in the thick of conference tourney play. The madness that is March has begun, so let's bring in bracketologist Jerry Palm as well as CBS college basketball analyst Matt Norlander. And gentlemen, let's start with your biggest winner, and I'll start with you, Jerry.
Well, for me, it's Kansas State. Kansas State is kind of a fringe bubble team that's going to need to pick up some wins, more than one, to get into the NCAA tournament. But they got the first one, and that first one was Texas, and that's a big win, and Texas is a tournament team. But now they get Iowa State, and Iowa State is a great opportunity. That's a top 10 team. If they can get that win, now we can start really taking Kansas State seriously as a potential NCAA tournament team.
I'm going to go not with the team, but with a man. I will go with Will Wade, the coach at McNeese. And this is someone who obviously lost his job at LSU because of all of the allegations there tied to the FBI scandal. He took a year away, and then he was hired a year ago by McNeese State. He served a suspension to start this season, and now this is a 30-3 team, the winner of the automatic bid out of the Southland. A few of those wins, by the way, against non-Division I opponents. Oh, by the way, but a dangerous team, and also and rates, you know, in predicted metrics, this is comfortably a top 65 team in the country. So it could be dangerous. And yes, for the idea that Will Wade comes back to the sport and immediately. It's nothing. Just dominating, rolling through the Southland. He's going to be back in the NCAA tournament a lot sooner than most people thought.
Good to see right there. Conference tourneys, an opportunity for so many teams to make the most of this because there are a handful of teams that are already in. I'll start with you, Matt, with regards to your biggest loser from Wednesday's play.
You know what? I'm going to take one that's not off the radar, but it might have been easy to overlook on a little bit of a wild Wednesday. I'm going to go Clemson. What are you doing? Like Boston College, I'd like to see Boston College be more relevant and consistent, so I like seeing that from that team. But Clemson, you've got an opportunity in the ACC tournament to move deep in a relatively weak field and maybe help your seed status. No, this is Ion College Basketball Podcast listeners know this is a seed line loss. Can't help but believe, Jerry, that with Clemson blowing that opportunity, that it's ultimately not going to drop them down a seed line on Selection Sunday.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. Yeah.
How about you, Jerry?
At Virginia Tech, I'm staying in the ACC. Virginia Tech was a fringe bubble team. They were going to need to do some damage in this tournament, and they started by losing to Florida State. And so now, you know, they're definitely on their way to the NIT. They'll get to play postseason basketball, but, you know, there's relatively slim hopes, you know, get dashed by losing to a team they shouldn't lose to.
All right, so Big 12 had a Kansas team playing without their two Wooden Award finalists, and it played out the way you might have expected. Cincinnati taking Kansas by 20. Jayhawks made a run at the start of the second half, got it to a 2-point game, but the Bearcats run away late. Certainly not having McCullough Jr. as well as Dickinson hurt Kansas. Matt, your forecast for what this team's going to be moving forward?
You know what? It's a hazy picture. So at least we know this. Kansas gets at least 8 days to rest before it faces probably a 13 seed. I guess maybe a 12 if they drop to a 5. I wouldn't be stunned. But Kevin McCullough Jr. is their best defender, and I think he's their best player. Hunter Dickinson, obviously, their best offensive player. Those are the two best players. Now, Bill Self has said they will return for the NCAA tournament, and to me, I mean, I've been saying this for weeks now. I just have not viewed this team because of its lack of depth. And we saw it. I mean, the fact that Kansas got rolled by 20 against Cincinnati, it's an impact on their long-term hopes. It's Bill Self, and if they're healthy, Kansas can absolutely make the second weekend of the tournament. But you might see this Jayhawks team wind up being on the wrong end of being a trendy first round or second round upset pick.
Jerry, I mean, how does the uncertainty of the health status of their two stars impact how they're going to be seeded moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the committee does take that sort of thing into account. You know, that look, the loss counts. You know, there's no erasing a loss just because players are hurt. They do put a little more weight on what the roster you're taking into the tournament, how you perform with that versus how you perform without it. But even considering that, the lack of depth on this team, the fragile nature of this team in the sense that there's no margin for error when it comes to the roster of this team. They've got to have everybody because they don't have anybody backing them up that's good enough to take them deep in this NCAA tournament. I wouldn't be surprised if they got beat in the first round, although I'm not so sure I'm going to pick it. You know, you talked about seed line loss earlier, Matt. This was probably a seed line loss as well.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, when you talk about two teams that punched their ticket to the big dance, McNeese and Colgate, how do they play out in terms of seeding for the coming tournament?
Well, McNeese is going to get a pretty good seed. They've had a great year. They've had a great record. They comp very similarly to Charleston from last year, which was a 12. The main difference is that McNeese has got a quad 4 loss and Charleston did not. So you might see McNeese as a 13. They could still be a 12. But, you know, when you've got that kind of a seed, you've got a puncher's chance in that first round. So it's pretty good for McNeese. Colgate will probably be closer to a 15. It's going to be a little bit tougher for them in that first round. So McNeese, though, is probably going to get a matchup that they have a shot at least at winning.
Matt, you gave us a hint at this answer, but of the two, which has a more opportunity to do damage in the tourney?
Listen, Matt Langel is a very good coach at Colgate. I think he'll get a good look at maybe getting a job bump in the next few weeks here, but the McNeese is the answer. It is a top 10 team in three-point accuracy. It doesn't turn the ball over. You see right here as we sit going into Thursday morning, Palm's got him on the 12 line. It would be quite coincidental, by the way, if we look up on Selection Sunday and it's Kansas against you know, if that were to happen, I don't know, who knows, but those teams are floating in that range. I think that especially if you see the Cowboys coached by Will Wade on the 12 line, or even if they're the best 13, this is going to be a trendy team, and with good reason. I mean, a 30-win team, a good three-point shooting team. They play with verve, and again, the fact that they're not prone to turn it over. Now they're going to have a jump up in competition, but I would take them of the teams that got the auto bid on Wednesday. They're my most likely Cinderella candidate.
So Thursday, the big dogs in these conferences get involved. A game or team to watch for you, Jerry?
Well, for me, I'm going with Wake and Pitt in the ACC tournament. These are two teams that are just off the bracket, and so for the winner, you get to continue playing and possibly play your way into the tournament. The loser is pretty much done and almost certainly going to miss the NCAA tournament. So this is a high-stakes game for two bubble teams. They're different. I mean, Wake has had trouble winning against quality teams off their home floor. Pitt has just been inconsistent, but the winner gets a shot at North Carolina.
It's a double bubble game, as you mentioned to me earlier, right? Matt, what has your attention?
I got a game in mind that is going to be going down at the same time, and I'm going to be there. Guys, I cannot wait to be at Madison Square Garden on Thursday. Are you kidding me? St. John's against Seton Hall is the 2:30 tip, so that's going to run right alongside that Wake-Pitt game. We got double bubble all over the board here. The building is going to be electric because St. John's hasn't had a game in the quarterfinals of the Big East tournament with this much anticipation in forever. Seton Hall's resume is obviously fascinating. The winner's got to feel pretty comfortable about getting into the field. The loser then, I think, is left to sweat. Real quick, Jerry, which team is in a worse spot if it loses in that game on Thursday? I'm curious.
Johnny.
I would say St. John's.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be a third loss to Seton Hall. That's kind of a problem. And they're losing, by the way. It would be considered a home game.
Yeah, that's the other side. But listen, cannot wait for that game. And Thursday at the Big East tournament is going to be electric. But of all the matchups, Johnny's Pirates is the one I'm looking forward to most.
They have responded to Rick Pitino hammering them. Ever since that, they haven't lost a game.
Correct. That is. There we go.
There you go. Another double bubble. He's Matt Norlander. He's Jerry Palm with insight. And you got plenty of insight coming up. Selection Sunday coverage. CBS Sports HQ is where you need to be locked to get it all.